Welcome back to Socap Talks, helping innovators build tomorrow, today. Now here's your hosts, Devon Kerns and Eric Sutphin.
Welcome back to Socap Talks. This is Devon Kerns, and we are here on the Social Capital Integration Series. And I'm here with Dr. Liz and Nancy. How are you guys doing?
Good. Very good.
Awesome. So a little background on all of us. I've got 20 years in leadership development, sales training, and really on the branding side of how do you go and recruit and how do you pull people in to your company. And Dr. Liz, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've got over 20 years of experience working with mentoring initiatives and leadership development initiatives across a number of different kinds of industries and also around the world. I've actually done that on 6 continents, so it's been a great 20 years.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Nancy, tell us about you.
I've got about 20 years of experience as well, primarily in a corporate environment of human resources, anything from benefits manager, compensation analyst, business partners, and now really cater to taking the pain out of the process for small business owners. So whether it's helping them from their day-to-day, getting some structure and implementing all the different things to help make them more efficient, to those occasional problem employees.
Awesome.
Occasional.
Once in a while.
Yeah. So glad to be sitting here with you guys and everybody else that's tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. Let's get to today's topic. So, Dr. Liz, I know you've been focusing in on a couple articles over the last couple of weeks. What is today's topic?
Well, so today's topic, we just wanted to look at the millennials. And, it seems like every time I go to a conference, that's what everyone is talking about. What do we do with the millennials? How do we work with the millennials? How do we make them successful? How do we put up with them? I mean, whatever it is. I mean, it goes anywhere from being super negative to just trying to figure out how to figure out the problem. So I think that would be a good thing for us to talk about.
The millennials in the title of your article is what?
Debunking the millennial malaise.
Malaise. I don't know that I've ever heard that word before. It just reminds me of mayonnaise. I'm quite visual here. So in the news, what kind of things have you seen out there, Nancy, around millennials or conversations in terms of HR? I know HR is always a fun topic, and we were actually sitting here a few minutes ago before going live, and you brought up something really interesting about the potential sensitivity in the HR world, right, with not just millennials, but conversations that are taking place across the board today.
Absolutely. So my take on what I've seen and some of the clients that I've been working with is such a sense of a desire and a need to be recognized as a professional, to feel like they are making an impact versus coming to work, getting that paycheck, and not having an intimate passion about what they're doing. They strive to have additional leadership training, learning, whether it's on the leadership side or technical side, but just to really become more of an impact in their day-to-day jobs. Part of that too, though, can raise some levels of sensitivity when it comes to an atmosphere, a work atmosphere that may be very casual, very laid back, may have a keg in the break room, or allow people to work from home and then feel like it's being abused. Anyway, point being is that having some sensitivity from CEOs, business owners, managers on how they address different topics. With that being said, how that can be perceived as being inappropriate. Example I gave prior to going on live was had a CEO mention to one of his employees on the way out of a weekly staff meeting that her spray tan, made some comment about her spray tan. And she felt very, didn't elaborate on the color or anything, but just enough for it to make her feel very uncomfortable. So she brought it to my attention as well as her manager and the director of operations.
So she brought it to HR's.
She brought it to HR's attention, and my goal was to help empower her to feel more comfortable, to say, hey, I know you made this comment, may not have meant anything by it, but given the prior conversations, I'm not feeling that comfortable, and going forward, I appreciate if you would not comment on my physical appearance. She did not feel comfortable doing this because she's an employee having to tell the CEO, I'm not comfortable with what you just said. So it really creates, I think, a tough dynamic when you do have somebody having to tell their superiors that something's uncomfortable or inappropriate. So we're in a really strange place right now, especially with the Harvey Weinstein scandal. Women are wanting to speak out more and more, and you're also realizing how much inappropriate, pervasive issue this really is.
So how do you, I mean, we kind of got fired up around this topic, and I feel like you need to be comfortable in your own orange skin if you're going to be orange, right? Yes. And so for me, like, I would want to know if I was orange. And is it really how it's brought up, or is it more so the fact that you just can't bring it up?
Right. Well, and I think bottom line is making comments about personal appearance that really have no impact on the business. If she is good in her orange skin, or maybe she's not, and that's why this comment was especially uncomfortable for her. I think we're moving more and more towards, whether it's PC or just being respectful, is not to take issue or take note of your employee's appearance as much as take note of their work. That's what's driving them, is to feel like they're doing a good job, that they're hitting the mark. They want that feedback. Not necessarily they want a trophy or a star for every time they complete a small task, which I think is a myth. Yeah, but they want to know, am I on target? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I meeting the mark? Where is the mark? Yeah. If I'm supposed to jump so high, where's that bar?
And I think effective feedback is something that we all need, and we should all be able to give and receive well. I know millennials want it more often, can be shorter. They don't want to wait for that at the end of the year, that one review that they get. But I think that it's important to remember that they while they want that feedback, they don't take it well. I mean, I don't know. I've had that. They seem super sensitive. A lot of the complaints that I've heard is that they do complain too much. That they feel they request things, that are just unreasonable because they've been given so much over all the years, and they've had that helicopter parenting happening. And I think we do them a great service if we can give them feedback from the right motivation of trying to help them grow in their leadership and develop them personally and professionally.
Well, and I'm going to debunk something right there, because my take is that you can't put them all into one bucket.
I agree.
I have seen the extreme millennial who, when her manager said, you know what, working from 8 to 4 every day it's not cutting it. I need you to put in 8 hours of work, if not more, based on our business needs. And she reacted with, well, if you want to subsidize my car because I'm carpooling right now, you want to pay for my dog walker $50 a day, then I could put in more time. She was at one end of the extreme, as where I've seen other millennials who work hard, are driving
really hard.
Driving crappy cars because they want to. They don't care. They don't care about the material things in life. They'd rather drive that crappy car so that they can travel and experience more in life rather than collect stuff. So I do think it's really important, and I hesitate to even refer to millennials, but some millennials, because there's some Generation Xers or baby boomers that don't fit that label. One size does not fit all.
I do agree with you on that, and I hate when you grab an entire generation and make snap judgments about them. I think it does everyone a disservice. But I do think that there are some trends that we can understand about millennials, things that are important to them. I know you mentioned the leadership development piece is important. I also know social issues are very important. I mean, they will go to an organization that's a green organization over one that isn't, and regardless of salary. I mean, not that salary doesn't matter, but it's not the most important driving force. Neither is, titles and those kinds of things. So I think if we understand some of those things that are motivating, that's a good positive thing. But one of the things that I wrote about in my article is I don't even think it's the differences that are the most important thing. I actually think it's more important to concentrate on the things we have in common and build from there. And there are a lot of things that we have in common as human beings.
One of the things that so the last couple of weeks we've had the fortunate experience to speak in front of a Realtors Association about millennials, and then we just sat down speaking with the Big Brother Big Sister organization talking about millennials. And it's so interesting how we do have this title, and all of a sudden this title of millennial means something to people that aren't millennials. But to a millennial, it literally means nothing. They're like, I'm a person wandering around trying to figure out this shit just like you are, right? And I do find it really interesting as I reflect on looking at human behavior and sitting down with my grandparents and sitting down with my great-grandparents a long time ago, and I'm auditory, so I'm kind of like a human recorder for the most part. I don't always recall it well, but when it comes up in topic, I recall it quickly. And one of the things I recall is year after year, after year after year, the older generations, even before I was born, complained about how the next generation is going to really screw this up, right?
Yep.
Now, I find that to be one of these topics that you're talking about where we're human, and that is a human thing, unfortunately, for adults to do as we move into 35 plus or 40 plus, and especially when we start, no offense to everybody on listening to this, but you reach the 60 plus mark, you're pretty much dead set in your ways, yeah, right? You've figured out your value systems, you've been there, you've done that, you've got your story, and now when you look at the rest of the world, everyone else is doing it wrong.
Right.
And I think for the most part, that's completely, we all know that that's wrong.
Yeah.
To put an entire generation into a box. Now, there are things that I find really interesting. This is, because of the information age and because of technology, a time period where we have taken a giant leap. And that leap, because of technology, is really around information and digested information. And being in the information age where millennials in particular have more information coming to them on a daily basis than our grandparents did in a lifetime. That is an incredible amount of information, not just information that they can go and find at a nanosecond, but now you're talking about ads and the bombardment of opinions and thoughts and theories, and it stirs up this chaos where now a part of what would be perceived as one of the myths of them being lazy, I don't think it's laziness. I think it's a total disconnect from an intent, from what is my purpose, because I've got one friend over here who's making $50,000 a month from YouTube videos because he's being a jackass and running around and jumping off stuff or scaring people with spooky costumes, and like, do I do that, or do I put on my professional hat and go out here and try and figure out this career thing because it's what everybody else told me to do? And then there's a giant, vast amount of choices in between.
Yeah,
as to how they can go out and show up in this world, on top of the fact that you guys were talking about, I've got a desire that's different desires than what my parents did and than what my grandparents did. I don't care about owning a car. I don't care about owning a house. You told me I should, but I'd rather go see the world and experience life because more and more it's reiterated how short life is.
Well, the path it just seems so unclear. As I've talked with people in the millennial generation, thinking about college, do we do it? That's another one. Like you said, owning a car and owning a house. Is college really the right thing? A good friend of mine, she's raising her girls to be little entrepreneurs. And that's what they do. They already have 2 different businesses that they run as a 10 and 11-year-old. And she said, we're saving money not for a college fund, but we are saving money like seed money for businesses. So I think I agree with you. You know, when I grew up, and I will tell you, I am a boomer. I'll admit it. I'm actually right on the line between an Xer and a boomer. So I kind of straddle it. Actually, almost.
You're an ex-boomer.
I'm an ex-boomer, exactly. So you know, it was pretty clear what you did. You went, you went to college, and then you got your job, and you stayed at that job for a long time. I mean, that's what was expected, and you found one that had a good retirement package, which, by the way, no one does anymore. Yeah. But that was what, and you retired, and you had your pension, and all of this. It's so different now, and there isn't a path. And I think that is something. I know when I have talked with businesses and worked with millennials there, one of the things they really ask for is a career path. Show us, and it doesn't have to be a vertical kind of career path. They just want to make sure that they are developing personally and professionally on a regular basis, and that it means something, that it's going somewhere. So
I think that's right.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I actually have 3 millennials in my family, and so watching how each of them have navigated, there's a huge population of, I believe, millennials who are stuck in their careers. They don't know where they're going. They don't know what their passion is. And it almost has them paralyzed as they're approaching 30 to say, what is my career? What am I doing? One of my clients had an employee leave. They tend to bring people in fairly green with the intent of training them up. But she ended up leaving social media to go into cosmetology. Total switch, totally different direction, but she dabbled in this and it didn't work out so well, so she's going to try something different. Yeah. So I have to agree. I think it was a lot easier in generations past, where it was somewhat more clear cut that you went to school, you got your piece of paper, you got your degree, and then your career started from that point. And now it's, the cost of college is making an impact, the range and the options that are bombarding them of different areas to go in. I've got some other friends, seems to be more on the male side of millennials, that tend to not have that straight line of focus. Well, so they're traveling the world. I've got a friend who he finds a job in Australia, works there for 4 months, and then decides, I'm going to go to London for another 4 months there, see if I can get a job.
But I think it's tough, and maybe this is with the helicopter parenting and everybody gets a medal. What is the yardstick? You know, when is it, like, when have you really done something of significance and not? And that's, again, another thing I know millennials and actually everyone appreciates at a work environment is to be told what they're doing matters and that they are making a difference.
Well, and that's something that I'm working with a client right now on, putting together job descriptions, which may seem very archaic and outdated, but they're striving for clarity. They don't know what is really expected of them. I had one employee say, I was, here for a month and didn't feel like I made a difference. I didn't do a thing because I didn't know what the acronyms meant. I didn't know what my job was. And so now they're able to give those to the employees to say, this is what you're going to be measured on at the end of the day. We'll enhance it with some SMART goals and things like that, but here's clarity of what the expectations are, that then as they recruit for new employees too, there's not this, vanilla explanation of what they're supposed to do, especially if they have not been in the industry before.
So you brought up recruiting, and that might be a great transition here into a singular topic that can really help the audience listening, particularly those that are in HR or C-suite levels within companies. One of the struggles that we as the triad doing social capital integration can help companies with is retention.
Yes.
And in terms of retention, what we know statistically with millennials is they've got an on average 2.5-year retention rate. And it's really interesting because I think we're all programmed for this longevity, but then none of us really enjoy the idea of being stuck in a single place for a long period of time on every age group. Right? So,
and companies don't employ you for that long anymore. I mean, to find even whatever generation, if you've been with a company for more than 5 years, I think that's a great accomplishment, because so many businesses, industries are focused on mergers and acquisitions. You're constantly bringing people in, at least from my perspective, bringing them all on board, laying off those to give severances and COBRA packages too, only then for a year and a half later, spin it all around and send those people on their way. So
really,
I
it's
think
about
the whole
changing
work
the
environment.
model, right? It's about looking at it and saying, expect the turnover. If you create a great environment with a great culture and you have a mission and a purpose within the dynamic of your company that's clearly expressed, you can retain them for maybe a year to 2 years longer, stretch it out to 4.5 years. But once you do, if you don't expect them to turn over and you've got a model that's built for longevity of sticking around, but yet they're only staying for 2.5 to 4.5 years, that's where the disconnect is. So how can a company really build an infrastructure where you don't depend on retention for beyond that 3.5, 4.5 years, but you create a great environment, and through that great environment, how can you prepare your company for that turnover? What can you do to continue to have that next generation of leadership stepping into your company?
And I think it is so important to create that really good culture, because when they leave, you want them to speak well of your organization. You want them to leave because they've outgrown that position, instead of, I can't stand the leadership there, I hate the product, I think there's corruption, it's unethical, all of those things. So I think it's, instead of focusing maybe on retention like you said, it's focusing on making sure that you're creating an environment and a corporate culture that is ethical, that is a place that people want to be from, proud to be from, proud to say, I worked at that company.
Yeah. But if you even back it up even further than that to the recruiting process, it's so critical to make sure that as a company, as leaders who are doing the hiring, they need to understand exactly the type of person that they want. So if you're hiring, green employees who have never really worked in, say, social media before, you want to train them up your way, that's awesome. But you need to make sure that through that interviewing process and recruiting process, you're looking at all the behavioral questions to be asking. Technical is one thing, what their aptitude is. If they're willing to learn, they can learn it. Yeah. But if they don't fit into the personality of that company, they're going to get in there for a few months and go, what is this?
I don't feel like I belong.
No, I don't feel like I belong, and why is it so loosey-goosey? They have a keg in the break room, but then, Megan had one on a Wednesday, and ooh, big deal, So you need to...
She talked about her orange skin.
Oh my gosh, it was just a cluster. So I think it is so important as a manager right off the bat to say, hey, I'm going to be giving you feedback. And it's not because I want you to feel bad, but it's because I want to help you, I want to groom you and help you grow to be as successful as you can in this company.
And that needs to be built into the value systems.
It does.
Yeah, and into the culture. It's that we're a company that gives feedback on a regular basis. And it's not just for, certain people here, it's for everybody. It's that, when it's really embedded in the entire culture with all the leadership, everyone, all the new people coming on, then it sticks and it stays.
Yeah, it's the communication is the key. That's what I've said forever, and I'm not the first. But communication from the very get-go to outline what those expectations are and have those honest conversations, but also to build the positives all along the way, not about what they're wearing or their tan, but, hey, I love what you did on this. If I could see just a little bit more of X, that would be awesome. As long as you're constantly building up that bank of positive communication, then when something does go sideways and you need to take them aside, it's not so uncomfortable. It's not like your boss has never been into your office before, and then the one day they do come, it's like they're rubbing their eyebrows and their forehead and stammering, trying to figure out how they tell you what should be very constructive. And that, I think, is key, is training managers, anybody who's going to be giving feedback, how to do it in the most constructive, positive, easy. Get in, get out, lay it out quickly, and then be gone. It doesn't take a 20-minute conversation. It just, hey, notice that this was slipping last week. If you could keep an eye on that, that'd be great. Done. Don't bring it up again at another meeting. Don't put it in the performance review. Unless it's or publicly announce, hey, what happened over here? Some of it's just common sense. But
remember that time, Nancy, when you were a total jackass? Oh, sorry, Dr. Liz, I didn't pay attention to the fact that you were here.
Yeah, well, I'm just kidding. I see that kind of communication going on too. I'm like,
It was a joke.
that's the most passive aggressive thing you can say,
Exactly.
so.
I don't want to go down that path because I am that person where I'm sensitive to the idea that if I know it's something that needs to be fixed, I won't bring it up in public. I'll pull you aside. But at the same time, there is something to be said about accountability amongst peers.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm in a boardroom with board members and something went awry, it's okay to have a real conversation within that dynamic, not for the sake of getting it validated, but for the sake of accountability.
Yeah.
However, when you are in an authority within the dynamic, a manager, a C-suite person, and you have one of your managers from the call center or managers from the sales group, and you're in a conversation about sales, and then you call them out as the CEO, man, it never goes well.
Yeah. Well, and that's what this scenario that I worked through this past week was because of the dynamics. Had it been a coworker and she answered in her email, I would have been totally comfortable saying, hey, I'm not comfortable with you making comments about my appearance. But this is her CEO. Totally different dynamic. As it is for me with HR. There's been times where I can be a little bit more casual in how I discuss something. And you can just see it on, as soon as I say it, they freeze. I think it's more so because it's coming from HR. So I have to be very sensitive to the fact of my position and what that can implicate for them down the road. So
going back to retention, we tend to keep going down the orange skin path, which I'll take blame for that. It was interesting when I was working with this incredible organization, and man, what a great mission that the Big Brother Big Sisters organization has in terms of mentorship and bigs working with littles. And it's really interesting because 70% of the people working within the staff of this organization are millennials. So millennials are clearly driven to mission-driven entities. And within that dynamic, you have, I forget exactly what the stat is, but a large number of the bigs, the mentors, working with these kids are millennials. And so not only working and getting a paycheck, but volunteering to work with these up-and-coming amazing kids that have unfortunately been through circumstances where life has been hard for them, and they get this mentor in their life and somebody that's passionate about making the change. However, what we found was in this ADD world that we live in, and what the conversation, a part of the dialogue, was not just retention around staff, but it was retention around volunteers. And it was really tough for them because you're volunteering, right? So at the end of the day, if a paycheck supersedes volunteering, paycheck's going to win. But two, a 90-day window is what we started having a conversation around with the volunteer, because they feel like if I don't see an impact in this kid's life, I kind of give up. And so there is this dilemma that I think is happening across the board in nonprofits, where how do I retain volunteers and how do I retain donors as well? And so it seems as though retention is not just an inside dynamic. One of the biggest things, going back to your point around, it's got to come from the value system and the culture of a company, and culture not being a keg or scooters, but
that
culture,
is not culture.
that's things that create a cool environment. That is not culture, right? So value systems, and I looked at the mission, which was super powerful, and then I looked at the vision. And the vision, again, this isn't knocking it, but it's going one level deeper as we started having this conversation with this group, the staff and the board members. And the vision was basically, we strive to create success for children. And I went, well, could that vision be hindering the retention of the mentors when they aren't included in the vision of the company? And what you're really wanting is the mentor to latch on to the success of the kid. Therefore, is your focus on the children, or should your focus be the success of a mentor leads to the success of the kid?
Right.
And so if you set up the environment differently, really focusing on who you need to be working with, who you need to be developing, right? If I'm a 25-year-old mentor and I want to mentor this kid, is all the focus on the kid? Or should an organization with baby boomers and everybody else be focusing on how do we develop that 25-year-old so the 25-year-old is developing the 9-year-old? And it's not built into the mission. And that's a top-down issue where we're not really understanding the archetype of what we want to attract. We're not understanding the archetype internally for our staffing. We're not understanding the archetype in terms of our mentors, and we're not understanding the archetype of a donor. And when I said, can you tell me who these people are that are mentors? Man, it kind of erupted in multiple different directions where it wasn't clear who this person is. And there was a fear, particularly in the nonprofit world that I've seen on a consistent basis within these organizations. If I choose an archetype as an example, then I'm leaving out a whole bunch of money and a whole bunch of donors and a whole bunch of mentors because I'm too focused on a specific. And it is such a backwards thinking. And to me, that shows a fear of losing out instead of if I just had focus, I could be abundant, or I could attract A-level talent, or I could attract incredible clients or incredible people and customers. If I'm clear on who the buyer is, if I'm clear on who the mentor is, if I'm clear on who the managers are in my company and why they're attracted and what about our company are those value systems that pulled them in the door here. Why did they choose us over someone else? And I think there's a total disconnect there in for-profit entities where, of course, you're going to work for us because we can pay you a paycheck.
Right.
Not today with millennials.
So I want to give an example. I used to work for a nonprofit that helped moms become better moms. I mean, it was kind of a support thing for that. And we had 30,000 volunteers around the country that we obviously wanted to retain. And they largely actually were millennials, believe it or not, because they had in order to be a volunteer, you had to be a mother of a preschooler. So in essence, a lot of them were pretty young. And they had a really hard time keeping volunteers, and they couldn't figure out what exactly was going on. But I think it totally speaks to what you're saying. We started a leadership development program for these volunteers, and we really prepared them. I mean, we had all kinds of categories of things we prepared them for so that they felt like we were really feeding into them, and they felt like when they left, we actually started getting the reputation, oh boy, they've worked for that company, they're a good leader. Like they end up going into leadership in their communities and all of that because they know they got actually legit leadership development training as volunteers. That was part of it. We valued those volunteers kind of in a different way. So I think it does work. I think what you're saying is a very wise thing.
Well, it's been a while since I've been called wise, but thank you. So in wrapping this up, I'd love to get one clear point from you, Nancy, as to how, from your perspective, how can a company, from an HR perspective, really help retain for a longer period of time, but prepare for not expecting the 25-year employee, but what can they do to really be prepared from an HR side of things for retaining a little bit longer, engaging a little bit longer, and then preparing for them to leave?
Yeah, I think it all boils down to communication. From the moment you interview that individual, making sure that they have the same type of expectations in terms of what their work style looks like and what your company has to offer. If you want somebody who's going to be there a certain period of time each day, you need to communicate that right up front. They may be thinking, oh, well, if I take off for a couple hours, go for a bike ride, I'm a big cyclist living in Boulder, rock climbing, whatever, but then they'll come back and be there, whether it's at the office or at home till 8 o'clock at night. Either way, you've got to set those expectations up front. The communication in terms of how to give that constructive feedback. This is why I'm going to give you feedback, is because I want you to grow and develop. And these first few months of being on board is critical for you to feel engaged. So for me, it's all about communication.
So take the time to be clear and then get it in writing so that it's precise, clear, communicated well, and in writing as to the expectation of that person
Yeah.
within the entity.
I have a client right now, and their employee handbook is completely contradictory to what they're doing every day on the job.
Awesome.
So no wonder there's confusion and clarity. And can I take time off for the holidays? I don't know. It's coming up and need to make my air travel. So again, to me, it all comes down to having that constructive and also sensitive, recognizing when is it appropriate for me to address your attire if you're going out to see clients and it may not be what you feel is a good representation of your company versus what they're wearing in the office, and does that make an impact? Is it distracting to the other employees? Learning really simple communication style to address uncomfortable situations is critical.
Awesome. How about you, Dr. Liz? What's the one thing from the human capital side and leadership development side of things?
I think, and I don't know that I even really mentioned it yet, but I think one of the things, especially related to millennials, and it's something that is important to them, is developing everyone. You know, instead of having these mentoring and leadership development programs for high potentials, that everyone is worthy of being a part of a leadership development, personal, professional development initiative and learning, and making sure that that's happening at all levels of the organization, because that ties them into your organization. That really is a culture piece. Mm-hmm. To me, that's how good culture sticks, is when you go, wow, I know this company cares about me and what I am doing for this company, mm-hmm. because they're feeding into me that way.
And beyond the company, develop them as leaders beyond your company. And some will stay and take over and mm-hmm. blow your mind, and yep. others will leave, and you get to be proud of their accomplishments because you were a part of their growth, instead of the mm-hmm. opposite, which you see in companies, and that is, well, I can't have you outgrow me because then you're going to take my position. Mm-hmm. That fear paralyzes an entire organization,
yes.
and it starts
mm-hmm.
from the top.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys so much, and thank you for tuning in and listening in. Stay tuned for our future chats around social capital integration. And remember, for those of you that are out there with orange skin, get comfortable in your orange skin.